Welcome back to Comics Cuts Live. We have a lot to get into today. Obviously, if you watch the show, you know I wasn't around last week. I apologize. I had a lot of stuff going on. But to make up for it, I've had a lot of thoughts on a lot of topics that I've held back over the past week, and I'm going to let them all loose tonight. So we got a really good docket. A lot of things on Avengers Doomsday, Spider-Man Brand New Day, Daredevil Born Again, X-Men, Batman, DCU, Batman Part 2, Peacemaker. We'll get into the finale, some things like that. Batman Part 2, DC in general, and just some industry things. So to start, let's get into Avengers Doomsday. All right. So listen, I understand they needed to call the movie Avengers Doomsday because the Avengers title brings the audience, it sells tickets. It is what Marvel has. It's been their premier cinema product for 13 years, right? But they kind of fumbled when it comes to the Avengers roster for Avengers Doomsday. And with everything going on in the story, maybe it wasn't the best move to call it an Avengers movie. They also fumbled with the TVA and the anchor being concept, and I just think maybe calling it something else. I know they just wanted to sell the tickets, but I think the Avengers title is a major mislead going into the story that they're trying to tell for Avengers Doomsday, other than the Avengers X-Men thing going on. And listen, there's a lot of things coming down the pipe in terms of what Marvel has indicated and straight up said they're going to do post Secret Wars. But I'm starting to think that a lot of the things that they said were just strategic because Kevin Feige said in an interview that they are going to be recasting Steve Rogers, Tony Stark. He didn't say it because he knows people are sensitive, but that obviously is going to include T'Challa. If he's saying they're going to recast Steve Rogers and Tony Stark, they're definitely recasting T'Challa. And I think that's a good thing. I think they should do it post Secret Wars. But then they released this photo over the weekend as part of Comic-Con, okay? And take a look. Take a look at the characters that you see. You know what you don't see? You don't really see any Avengers other than Spider-Man, who technically might not be an MCU Avenger right now based on the events of No Way Home. And that's why I titled the episode today, Avengers vs. X-Men. I think the Avengers vs. X-Men thing is more of a strategic battle in terms of who's going to have the Marvel spotlight rather than a plot device or a title based on hype. I think that they are trying to put some other characters into the logo now based on comics that are coming out. But I think there's more to it because it's interesting that there really aren't any main Avengers. You don't see Steve Rogers. You don't see Tony Stark. You don't see T'Challa. You see Doctor Strange back there. There's Spider-Man. There's Miss Marvel, who's not an Avenger yet. I'm sure she will be. But you get the point. I just think that it was a mistake. I think that they are leading people on with the Avengers Doomsday title. And it just has to do with the fact that the Avengers kind of suck. And I think Marvel knows that. The Avengers of today suck. The roster is trash. And that's why they're bringing back the old X-Men. And I'm telling you right now, when we get out of Secret Wars, you know what's it's going to be? It's going to be all that they're telling us that they're going to recast Steve Rogers and Tony Stark and all them. Do you really think they're going to recast those characters and Steve Rogers, who's not Chris Evans, Tony Stark, who's not Robert Downey Jr., are going to be bigger characters than the X-Men? And we know it's going to be the Mutant Saga. And they just announced that the X-Men movie is coming out in 2028. So I'm telling you, it's going to be all X-Men. There's just so many of them. There's so many of them that are so cool and have cult followings. You know, you go into a comic book store and you look at the Marvel new releases section on any random day, guaranteed half of that shelf is X books. Okay. Avengers don't carry that kind of weight when it comes to selling comics. So I think Marvel is starting to take a look at that, and X-Men are going to be the big thing post Secret Wars. Another thing that Marvel fumbled really badly in the lead up to all this was the TVA. I think that the TVA, they did a really good job with the TVA for a while. It was probably the coolest thing they had going in the MCU right up until Deadpool and Wolverine. And what happened in Deadpool Wolverine that made the TVA such a fumble? It wasn't the actor, the guy from Succession. It wasn't Deadpool or Wolverine. It wasn't the cameos, because that had nothing to do with the TVA. It was the lore. The anchor being concept is the dumbest lore I've ever heard of in a comic book movie. I hate the anchor being concept. I said it was trash from day one. You know, when I went to see Deadpool and Wolverine, I used to do this show with a partner, and at the time, me and that partner were good friends, and we talked all the time. And he was like, he had went during the day or whatever, and he told me that movie is amazing. Marvel is back. And I went and I saw Deadpool and Wolverine, and I was so disappointed because I was expecting Marvel to really be back. I thought that movie was going to be amazing, and it wasn't. But what really pissed me off about Deadpool Wolverine, other than the cameo porn, is the anchor being concept. The anchor being concept is so dumb because think about it. In that one instance, it kind of could make sense, I guess, even though I still don't like it, that Logan, Wolverine is the anchor being. But if you're going to see the anchor being concept play out, right, keep in mind the anchor being was always going to be someone who was someone with superpowers. It was always going to be a superhero, maybe a supervillain. It was never going to be someone of significant importance to the universe that wasn't like a superhero. It was never going to be someone like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Barack Obama. It was always going to be a superhero, and that doesn't really make sense, because if someone's an anchor being and they were destined or kind of chosen by godlike forces to be the anchor being, it wouldn't make sense if it's only superhero. So I just thought that whole thing was stupid. I think that they tried to drive the lore a little bit better with Fantastic Four around the Power Cosmic. The Power Cosmic is a really cool idea. And the Power Cosmic, obviously, you know, if you read the comics, when you saw Sue Storm's eyes and light up with the Kirby crackle, like that's what it looks like in the comics. That was cool. And it makes sense that Doctor Doom is after the powers of the Power Cosmic. You know, but anyway, during that, you know, when Sue said to Reed at the end of the movie, hungry, your reason, that's not the reason why I hate the anchor being concept. It's one of the reasons, but not the main reason. What are the other reasons, hungry? I would love to hear. I think we've spoken about this before, but I thought we were on the same page there. So I want to hear what your problems with it. Although I'm sure I'll agree with it too, because you know how much I hate that thing. But anyway, Sue said to Reed when Franklin, you know, was being born, or when Franklin was being born, Sue said, everything's going to change. You can't promise that it won't. And she kind of foreshadowed about how powerful Franklin was going to be, especially for the fans that were watching the movie that don't really know the comics. And I'm sure many of them have probably heard about Franklin on the internet. But I think she was foreshadowing more. I think she foreshadows Doom coming for Franklin and how significant the power cosmic will be to Avengers Doomsday. And, Reed, by the way, at the end of that movie, Fantastic Four, when he almost lost Sue, I think that was another big foreshadow. And I think that was a big foreshadow to, oh, no, I did it again. I forgot a picture. Hold on. So, of course I would. I always miss like one or two pictures. Pulling a screenshot from Secret Wars, so bear with me. This image right here. So this image was when Reed Richards built this raft for some of the remaining people from the 616. And they were strategic about who got to go on the raft because the raft didn't have that much room. And they wanted to make sure humanity had its best chance to survive and thrive. So they were specific with who could make it on that raft. And Reed put his foot down for his family. They ended up dying. They ended up falling out of the raft. They didn't make it on their jump to the raft. And this is a picture of Reed Richards, obviously distraught over the instance where he lost his family. I think that moment at the end of the Fantastic Four, when Reed was hysterical, when he thought he had lost Sue before Franklin saved her life, I think they're going to play off of that moment in Secret Wars, maybe Avengers Doomsday. But if it's going to be Avengers Doomsday, it's going to be the end of Avengers Doomsday. If not, it'll be the beginning of Secret Wars. But this is a frame from the first issue of Secret Wars when they are fleeing the final incursion. The main reason why I hate the anchor being is because it makes everything convoluted. So every universe has an important person, and if that person dies, then the universe dies. It means everything else doesn't really matter. That makes sense too. It's just stupid. It's stupid. Like, a person can't be an anchor being. It just doesn't make any sense. You could say that person is really significant and the world feels a loss when that person dies, like, kind of how a lot of people felt about, Chadwick Boseman. You could say something like that, but Earth still survived. And I understand we don't live in a Marvel universe, but it's still a stupid concept. Okay. So, yeah, I think Reed is going to lose not just Sue, but his family all over again, like he did in Secret Wars. And that's why I think that final scene in Fantastic Four was brilliant. Now that I've watched Fantastic Four a couple more times at home, I have more thoughts on that. But yeah, Hungry, I was talking about, I think probably before you came, but I was saying, I think it's a mistake that they named Avengers Doomsday. I understand that they kind of had to from a business perspective because Avengers has been the MCU's premier cinematic product since 2012, 13 years now, and it sells tickets. But I think they're misleading the audience in doing so. And Marvel is becoming, it's becoming common for Marvel to mislead the audience to sell tickets, or to just, maybe not mislead's not the right word, but they are hurting the experience of watching their movies in an effort to sell tickets. They did the same thing with Captain America: Brave New World. A lot of people said, which I agreed with, Red Hulk shouldn't have appeared in the marketing, because if they kept it a surprise, people would have enjoyed the movie more. They would have kept, made it more suspenseful and surprising and exciting at the end. But At the time, I said I understood. They wanted to sell tickets, but now they have to suffer a lot of people saying that movie sucked. And most people that saw that movie said that. You know, I was a little forgiving about it because I still enjoyed it to an extent. But that was a really important movie for Marvel. You know, that movie needed to be a banger because they needed to establish Sam Wilson as Captain America. There's a lot of people online that are unfair to him because he's black, and you know, now they could just say, "Oh, well, everyone hated the movie." Marvel should have known that, and they should have delivered, but they didn't. All right, so you know, yeah, I just think like Avengers Doomsday. Who cares about any of the Avengers that we're talking about for this movie? No one really does. It's crazy. Um, there's another photo. You know, the big draw for me, you know, I like the new Avengers team. I like the Fantastic Four, but it's not Avengers. Anyway, going into, you know, Doomsday and Secret Wars, I talk about it all the time. It's the greatest story ever told, and it's the Time Runs Out Avengers saga by Jonathan Hickman. Spoilers if you want to read it, but if you haven't read it yet and like you've been watching the show, I've spoiled a lot of things from this story. But there is a religion that is created to kind of hide some of the things that are going on. And long story short, there's this figure, Rabum Alal, who is a very significant figure throughout the story. And he is the leader of that religion. And at the very end, Doctor Strange goes to the Library of Worlds to confront Rabum Alal. And he enters a door, and this is what you see. Doctor Doom. So, you know, there were rumors about a Doctor Strange 3 or a third movie that's going to be tied into Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. And a lot of people thought that it made sense, myself included, because if you know the story, there is a lot of story that Marvel is seeming to skip over. And if they're going to skip over it, they can't really do that because this is a very intricate, complex story. And a lot of that plot is going to have to be told somewhere. So that's why people thought the Doctor Strange 3 storyline, and you could have shown, you know, this iconic frame when he, you know, opens the door in the Library of Worlds and sees Doctor Doom, and Doctor Doom blows his mind about what Doctor Doom had done with Molecule Man. And what Doctor Doom had done was really interesting because Doctor Doom understood what the Beyonders had done to set off the incursions, but Doctor Doom was trying to pick from the lesser of two evils. What you have to understand about Doctor Doom is that if it wasn't for, excuse me, if it wasn't for Doctor Doom, not only in belief, but also in practice, believing that the ends justify the means, he could be a hero. And they even played with that, actually, with the infamous Iron Man story. And that came right after Secret Wars. You know, because Doctor Doom was like, you know, I'm going to try to be a hero. Didn't work out, but, you know, he did. And, yeah, so I would like to see that story told somewhere. I think it's the best part of the whole thing. I really do. But we'll see. I can't imagine they're going to skip over all of it. All right, so let's get to some of the Hungry's comments. The sad thing is I still don't mind Sam as Cat, but now I'm 100% sure Marvel is going back to Steve Rogers post Secret Wars. Yeah, 100%. They already said they're recasting him. So, you know, listen, it is not 2018 anymore, okay? Like, we don't live in a world where Marvel is easily scoring $1 billion in movies at the box office. And we live in a world where businesses are putting business first and not social issues, which they've always done. They just tried to hide it a little more from 2015 to 2020, and here's the thing. I think a lot of people are going to be really upset when Steve Rogers comes back, because they're going to see that Sam Wilson never really had a fair chance. And to some degree, I kind of agree with them. I think that Sam Wilson, they didn't really do him justice with that movie. Like, he is a much better character. Anthony Mackie is a very good actor. They also didn't do him justice with The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. They made him apologetic for terrorists. They made him a mouthpiece for the snowflake mob's agenda. And it rubbed a lot of people, myself included, as you could tell, the wrong way. I didn't take it out on the character. I didn't say I don't like the character. I still was excited for Captain America: Brave New World, but I'm definitely going to criticize it, okay? So the only way Marvel can make sure Doomsday and Secret Wars feel like Avengers movies is if they reunite Cap, Thor, Iron Man, Hulk, the big four of the Avengers. The MCU started with those four, and it will end with those four. It's a fair point. Like, it really does, because, I think like 2 weeks ago, was it, when I did you're looking at the Avengers for the movie. Those Avengers were Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four. They weren't really Avengers. Even now, like, there's a comic book that Marvel released, not coincidentally, around the time, the same week they released Thunderbolts in theaters, and it's the new Avengers, and it's like Bucky's on the team, Carnage is on the team, all these characters that aren't really Avengers. Bucky's the only one of them that's like somewhat legitimate, or Bucky is a legitimate Avenger. You can give him that. But, I always look at that comic book and I'm like, these aren't Avengers. Like, what the hell is going on? And that's kind of how people are looking at this movie, myself included. I'm still excited for this movie. I still think this movie is going to do good. I think it's going to perform in the box office. But like I said, I think it was a mistake. They should have just called it Doomsday. They shouldn't have called it Avengers Doomsday. Or it seems like they want to keep the Avengers title because they know it sells tickets. And no, they should have figured something out there, because it's going to piss people off. I know it's already pissing you off, Hungry. I showed a bunch of friends the picture of the characters in that pillow or whatever. It was a tote, but whatever. It doesn't even matter. And a lot of them said, why are some of the Fantastic Four, X-Men, Thunderbolts? Yeah, exactly. It's confusing. It's like, these aren't Avengers. These are just like the heroes that you currently have, and that's who you need to use. But they're calling it Avengers just to sell tickets. Nothing against Sam Wilson, but but Steve Rogers is my third favorite superhero of all time. So going back to Steve with a new actor and a fresh new take, I'm all for it. I 100% agree with you. He is probably my third, second, fourth, something like that as well. So I agree with you. And I have nothing against him. I love Sam, but Steve Rogers is my favorite. Like, Steve Rogers is just that guy. He's one of a kind. Are you talking about the latest new Avengers run with Bucky and Hulk? If so, I would say Bucky and Hulk are the only legitimate Avengers. I think Hulk is on the team too. Hold on, let me take a look. Yes, it's. Hold on, I'm gonna pull up the cover. It has some. It actually has Black Widow. So you got It's got Black Widow. It's got Namor. I've been needing to read this actually because I do like a lot of the characters. But then it's like YX23. Like that, like stuff like that pisses me off. You're already working with a team that's like kind of degraded. At least use the real Wolverine. If the Fantastic Four are the main characters, then the name should be Fantastic Four Doomsday and Fantastic Four Secret Wars. See, like that would be brilliant because you could play that off and make the Fantastic Four bigger and more important, which would help you out post Secret Wars. But they're not. They're just thinking the Avengers is that's the title that sells tickets. You know, like the amount of tickets it sold for Infinity War and Endgame. You know, that's what they want to do. So, yep, that's the one. Okay. Yeah, you know, and it's going to be interesting because the X-Men is coming out in 2028. So the other thing I've been thinking about is talk about Spider-Man. So I think that for Spider-Man Brand New Day, the rumor, and it does seem like, and it should be the case, that Daredevil is in Spider-Man Brand New Day. Punisher is going to be in it. Why not have Daredevil too? The street level heroes of New York City. And I was already thinking about that. And then Brad Winderbaum, I forget his exact title, but his job is that he is the head of Marvel Television. So like he leads Marvel Disney Plus. That's all him. And I know a lot of the projects have actually been bad, but I do believe that this guy is good at his job. He's very smart. Every time I hear him speak, I'm impressed. Anyway, he said, speaking on the connection between Daredevil Born Again Season 2 and Spider-Man Brand New Day, he said, I think everything will go in order. There's a coherence there. They're part of the world, but I wouldn't put too much faith in big, strong narrative connections. And he also revealed that the Born Again team is in contact with the Brand New Day team to ensure coherence. Like, I understand that a lot of fans want to see Daredevil and Spider-Man. I understand that from the fans' perspective, they think, oh, well, it could work like this or you could work like that. Here's what Disney understands, and here's why they should do it. They should do it because Daredevil Season 1, Born Again, not Netflix, did so horribly on Nielsen's ratings that you need to put Daredevil into Spider-Man Brand New Day because Daredevil needs the popularity boost from that movie. Spider-Man Brand New Day, in terms of selling tickets, will be fine without Daredevil. Sure, it could probably help, but Daredevil Season 2's ratings and Season 3's could use the boost from Daredevil being in Spider-Man Brand New Day. Marvel post Secret Wars should use street level characters as their Disney Plus, and then when it comes to the movies, they can appear in Spider-Man movies, Daredevil, Punisher, Moon Knight, etc. I like that to an extent. I don't think that all Spider-Man movies should be like the playground for the culmination of the street level Disney Plus stuff. I think that they need to figure out how to be better with Disney Plus. I think that they could release Punisher special presentation, Daredevil Born Again Season 2, and do like a special 3-part Marvel television special presentation or limited series. I hate the word limited series, but it's the same thing. You could do like a 3 hour and 20-minute episodes of like a major Devil's Reign type story. And they need that anyway. They need to boost their Disney Plus subscribers. See, listen, a lot of pod creators love to say, oh, I could write this, I could write that. I used to do a show with a kid who was always like, oh, well, you should hire us, right? And I was always like, have you ever written a script before? Like, what are you talking about? But I'll tell you this. If there's anything, Marvel, you want to hire me to do, hire me for some creative strategy for Marvel television. I would crush it out of the park. I guarantee you I would bring your subscriber count up. Because I know that idea that I just dropped about like a hour and 20-minute, 3-part special presentation with Spider-Man, Daredevil, or Punisher, or just Daredevil and Punisher if you can't put Spider-Man in it because of Sony and you don't want to put Spider-Man in a TV show. I understand that too. I understand you don't put characters like Spider-Man, your A-list product, on a B-list tier service. I get it. Super hot take, but if Spider-Man Tom Holland is not in Doomsday, I will not be upset. See, that's interesting because for someone who complains so much about the roster, why wouldn't you want Spider-Man in there? I won't be upset about it either. I think that they're going to pull off Avengers Doomsday. I think it's going to be a good movie. We're getting Spider-Man 6 months before Avengers Doomsday, so I'm okay with it. I also don't know what they could do to make Spider-Man an Avenger again in that short of time without making the ending of No Way Home feel cheap. So I don't think it's the right move. But the rumor is that he is not going to be in Doomsday, but he's going to have a huge role in Secret Wars. And what you also have to keep in mind was that he was barely in Avengers Endgame, and that turned out okay. Granted, Avengers Endgame had a lot of other heavy hitters to pick up the slack. You still had Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Hulk, all of them, But Spider-Man didn't come in until the very end from the portal scene in the final battle. So now there's another thing I heard about Spider-Man Brand New Day that I'm not so excited about. Is that Scorpion will play a major role, but is still not the main villain. See, it's things like this that I just don't understand, okay? Like, why? Spider-Man has such a fire rogues gallery. Spider-Man has some of the best villains in the game. You don't become the best character of all time without having a great rogues gallery. What are they doing using Scorpion? Like, there's so many better choices, even if he's not the big bad. There are so many better choices than Scorpion. Scorpion's just a tool. And the only reason social media like Scorpion is because most people don't read comics, so they don't experience the character of Scorpion, and they just think he's got a cool looking suit because it's got a shiny green tail. Like, I'm telling you, that's it. That's it. Scorpion is not a cool character, okay? Did I make myself clear? I got to say it again? Because I will. Scorpion is not a good character. Scorpion sucks. I am so over people on social media campaigning for the lamest, corniest villains because they do it all the time. They do it with Mr. Freeze. They do it with Scorpion. Just stupid, man. Okay? I'm fine with no Spidey because even though, yes, Spidey has been in Avengers runs before, I never viewed him as an Avenger like on the level of Iron Man, Cap, Thor, Hulk, T'Challa, Hawkeye, Ant-Man, Wasp, Black Widow, etc. It's a fair point. Because Spider-Man stands on his own better than the rest of them do. Like, Spider-Man, By the way, Marvel has a new Iron Man run coming out by Joshua Williamson. And let me make sure I got it right. Because their last Iron Man run was the worst Iron Man run I've ever read. It was so bad. It was by a guy named Spencer Ackerman. So if you want to complain about the writer, that's his name. He was horrible. Okay. Now, there are a lot of interesting characters here, but there is Captain America. That is Chip Zdarsky's Captain America. And you also have Pepper Potts. You have Norman Osborn. You have Madame Mask. Everyone was saying over the weekend that Marvel is getting destroyed on comics and DC is just destroying them. And I really disagree. I think that Marvel maybe didn't win on the announcements at Comic-Con, but Marvel is crushing it right now. First of all, the Ultimate Universe has, make sure you catch what I say, more to offer than the Absolute Universe. I'm not saying I don't love the Absolute Universe, but Absolute Batman is tiers better than Absolute Superman and Absolute Wonder Woman. Whereas with the Ultimate Universe, you have Ultimate Invasion, you have Ultimate Spider-Man, you have Ultimate Black Panther, you have Ultimate Wolverine, which got bad, but it was cool at first. The Ultimates, you have much more with the Ultimate Universe. You have One World Under Doom, Amazing Spider-Man, Captain America. I mean, there's Imperial. There's so many fire books going on at Marvel right now. And I understand DC. Like, I'm loving the Batman stuff. All the Batman books are crazy. Green Lantern, Aquaman, Justice League sucks. But Marvel is not doing horribly. I'm convinced that a lot of people who are saying this are just don't read Marvel books or don't really read comics and are just jumping on the bandwagon of what everyone else is saying, per usual. So you can make Scorpion the main bad, but you would have to completely change his character like how Matt did with Riddler. But Scorpion, how we generally know him, don't work as a main bad. See, even that, like, yeah, if you wanted to, you would 100% have to change him. But, like, the Riddler was changed, but the Riddler is still cool in a lot of comics. Like, yeah, he's a little bit of a loser for sure, and he's definitely a dweeb, but the Riddler has great comic stories. 0 Year being a great example, by Scott Snyder. It was in the same run as the Court of Owls. One Bad Day Riddler was really cool. War of Jokes and Riddles. Like, there are multiple fire Riddler stories where Riddler is a good character, where Scorpion, like, I'm sure I've read some, but I couldn't name you one off the top of my head. I'm sure I've read stories where he's been the villain, but I couldn't name a good one off the top of my head. So for Daredevil season 2, we got an official look from one of the trades at the suit, which this is such an easy W. Like, this is so smart of them to do because everyone loved his suit in Born Again season 1, but why not change it up? Why not give us a new suit? Because now everyone's talking about it on the internet again. Easy W, take it. And this is the title card for the show. I think it looks good. I like the cityscape that was in the first one, though, but it looks good, and it pairs well with the black suit with the red double Ds. Haha, double Ds. You get that? So anyway, we have some details about some of the things that are going to take place during the show. So let's read them off, shall we? Matt and Karen kissing and dancing. Matthew Lillard as Mr. Charles. Jessica Jones and Foggy Nelson both appearing. Very interesting. Kingpin boxing and running an underground prison, Bullseye having a vanilla milkshake with a cherry on top. These are the details that people saw in the trailer or footage that was shown at Comic-Con. So, listen, I think the show is going to be great. I love season 1. I'm actually rewatching season 1 right now because I just wanted to reread Devil's Reign. And I was like, you know what? I might as well just reread the whole thing. But yeah, I think the show is going to be great. I think the first one was great. I just think they need to get more people to watch it. And that's what, like, if they did that 3-part special presentation after season 2, before season 3, like, they need to do things other than animation that people are excited about for Disney Plus. Hungry Almighty. I have always viewed Marvel as 4 pillars: Avengers, X-Men, Fantastic Four, and Spider-Man. Hence why I don't view Spider-Man as main Avengers, but rather a side Avenger that pops in here and there. And that's accurate, by the way. First of all, that's definitely the 4 pillars of Marvel. And yeah, like, that's kind of how I view Spider-Man, because he's an Avenger when they really need him to be. But other than that, like, he is kind of like, I don't want to say Batman, because Batman has like an entire corner of DC that is just Batman, and Spider-Man is much more interconnected with the rest of the MCU at all times, whereas Batman, you know, he's in Justice League, he's in World's Finest, but, like, you know, the current Batman is just about Batman and Gotham, like, and he's got like 10, you know, Batman comics at a time that are all about his world in Gotham, where, you know, Spider-Man, you're much more likely to run into other characters in a Spider-Man comic than you would be in a Batman comic. You know, what Marvel is doing with Imperial right now, the Hickman cosmic, you know, who did it mystery kind of thing, it feels a lot like what they did with Annihilation in the 2000s when they wanted to make cosmic more important. I still wouldn't go as far as say, even when done successfully, like, Marvel Cosmic is definitely not a pillar of Marvel, because it's just not as significant as the ones that Hungry listed off. But it is a very important and exciting piece of the Marvel Universe. And Marvel brought that into play so well with the MCU. They did it with the Guardians of the Galaxy. They did it with Infinity War and Endgame, you know, and that stuff really worked. All right. So with the X-Men movie releasing is reportedly, sorry, I don't know if it was actually confirmed by Marvel, but the rumor is it is releasing May 5th, 2028. Brad Winderbaum also said that Apocalypse is going to be a big part of X-Men 97 Season 2, and he revealed that they're already discussing Seasons 4 and 5, and a new season will release every year starting in 2026. And this goes back to why I titled the episode Avengers vs. X-Men, because I'm telling you right now, that is intentional. The fact that they are releasing X-Men 97 seasons, a new season annually, leading up to the X-Men MCU release, they are betting it big on X-Men. You might even argue they're betting the entire MCU on the X-Men. I'm telling you right now, they are not recasting Tony Stark and Steve Rogers for them to be the main characters of the MCU at that point. Those characters are going to be, the actors are going to be held up to Robert Downey Jr., it's going to be held up to Steve Rogers, whereas the X-Men are going to be fresh. And yeah, some people will compare them to the older Fox X-Men, but it's not going to hold as much weight because they're probably going to be killed off in Doomsday. And this is a completely new thing. So I think they're betting it big on X-Men, and that's going to be interesting. Apocalypse as the villain, great choice. Apocalypse is a great villain. So yeah. All right. What do we got? And one more thing. If they weren't going to do the special presentation collab of Daredevil and Punisher, like, they should just make a Daredevil Punisher movie, because that would go crazy. Could you imagine seeing a Daredevil Punisher movie? All right. Now let's get into DC. So I loved Peacemaker. Okay. I really did. I thought it was great. I loved every episode. I loved the finale. And we're going to get into why I think Peacemaker is so great. But I don't think it was the right move. I don't think it was the right move for Peacemaker to be, first of all, like the stepping stone between Superman and Man of Tomorrow. What? Like, I understand that James Gunn loves these lesser known characters, and that's cool. Like, that, there's a place for that. But the place is not in establishing a new universe. The place is for, once you've already earned credibility with that universe, then you could bring in those characters and, you know, get a little more experimental with who you're putting the spotlight on. And it was rated R, or whatever TV mature is. And, you know, there's a lot of kids that I'm sure weren't able to watch it because of that. I also think James Gunn fumbled on teasing a big cameo, because he said that there was going to be big cameos and people were speculating on which big character it was going to be. And there weren't really any, you know, which, that's fine with me. Like, I didn't have a guess that I was hoping on, so I was like, whatever. And, you know, apparently Peacemaker is going to appear in Man of Tomorrow, which I guess it's not the biggest deal. Like, he's probably not going to have a big role in it. But I do see a lot of people hating on Peacemaker, and that is another thing. I think it's a great show. I really like the character. I think John Cena is a phenomenal actor. Exactly. Now I can't believe Gunn anymore. And by the way, I'm going to get to your last Marvel comments, but I want to keep it DC for this for a second. And, you know, I think I've shared on here before, I'm sober. I've been sober for a while now, but it's something that, you know, I used to struggle with my addiction in the past, and I've been was trying to get sober for a really long time, since I was a kid. And there were some really interesting story pieces here. Peacemaker said, "It's not your world or mine, it's me. Take your and like, because he really loved the other universe, because he was treated better there. He had his father and his brother, and he was happier there. But eventually, he had problems there. And that's when he said, it's not your world or mine, it's me." And that was really interesting. And that was some real deep, rich storytelling. This is something that I've learned since the first time I tried to get sober. They tell you that in rehab and all that kind of stuff, that, you know, because there's always people who are like, oh, you know what? I don't need to go to rehab. I just need to move to Florida, and I won't, you know, I'll be sober. I won't have problems anymore. And you take your problems with you wherever you go. And that's something you learn with experience. But people tell people, and, you know, it's one of those things a lot of people have to learn the hard way. But this was like a really deep message for a show that people knock as silly and meaningless. Yes, it had humor. yes, it was funny and it was a little cartoonish at times, but there were some still deep and rich themes to it, and it was really brilliant storytelling. I just think that a lot of fans in the comic book movie genre are really one note. They just really have a one note taste. And that's why they complain about, you know, for example, someone I used to do the show with complained about, like, oh, what was it? He was like, I don't want to see the personal lives of superheroes. I just want to see them be superheroes. And it's like, that's like one of Stan Lee's biggest things. He was like, when Stan Lee was like, when I first started writing comics, I wrote what I wanted to see. I wanted to see the three-dimensional life of these characters. I wanted to see what their personal lives were like. I wanted to see what their relationships were like. And Peacemaker nailed that aspect. Okay. I really, really love Peacemaker. I think it's one of the best comic movie shows. I really do. I just think it was the wrong time for it. I think that this show should not have been the first live action HBO Max series when you just had a win with Superman. You still have people that are, looking to criticize every single thing that you do. You don't have Batman yet. There's a Batman problem that we're going to get into. And it just was not the right time. And I don't know, so Kevin, what's good? As much as I love Peacemaker, you are right. I think it was the wrong move to have an R-rated passion project show set up, mostly kid-friendly universe. I agree. And listen, I really wish that it was the right time to do it because I love the show. But I just think it was the wrong time. Someone on X, by the way, check out Kevin's show is launching tomorrow. So check Kevin's Twitter. He posted it. Kevin, if you want to comment it here, I'll post it on the screen for everyone to see. Kevin's a good guy, and I'm sure his show is going to be great. I'm definitely going to be checking it out. So anyway, so someone the other day, he basically was DC Jim Lee, who is the president and chief creative officer of DC. He said that DC will not now or ever use AI, which everyone pretty much celebrated. Okay, whatever. And this guy that I'm kind of friendly with, but whatever, he was like, he rides James Gunn hard. Like, I've never seen anyone ride James Gunn harder. And I'm a big James Gunn fan, don't get me wrong, but he was like, I forget exactly what he wrote, but he was like, James Gunn, hats off to James Gunn. James Gunn did the right move or something. If you want to look at the Twitter exchange, I'm not going to name him, but I will say you could just go to my Twitter and search for the word relevant. And it's a conversation about making comics relevant again. Because he was like, James Gunn made comics relevant. Of course, this was inspired by James Gunn. I'm like, do you not even know who Jim Lee is? Like, this has nothing to do with James Gunn. He's like, oh, you're just drinking the Snyder Kool-Aid. I'm like, oh, I'm drinking the Snyder Kool-Aid because I won't say that James Gunn made comics relevant. James Gunn has nothing to do with the comics. Like, it's ridiculous. So it was stupid. Anyway, and I'm starting to realize that there are a lot of people out there that, like, obviously the Snyder cult is ridiculous. We know that. But there's some really, really lame James Gunn fans, okay? And if I'm saying it, because I'm a big James Gunn fan, okay? But, guys, if we're getting to the point where we're not giving someone credit for something they had nothing to do with, is drinking the Snyder Kool-Aid, that is such a bad look for James Gunn fans, okay? It is not a good look. And, I was like, you should be fucking embarrassed, bro. That was pathetic. So, but I think it was a great show. I think it had some really rich themes and deep messaging. I just think it was the wrong time. I think it was the wrong time for it. That's all. So this is Kevin's show, youtube.com/@comicstartalk. So that's @comicstartalk. 1S Comic Star Talk. All right. So let's get to the rest of the gun comments, and then I'll get to the Marvel comments that we had that we missed. And the Snyder fans think we worship Gunn and don't criticize James Gunn. Exactly. Like, listen, if you are I tweeted this the other day too. If you are a fan of something and you can't handle criticism or criticize it, you're not a fan. You're a shill. Okay, and it's one of the reasons I had to do my own show. Okay, like, so yeah, and like, it was stupid of him to hype up those cameos. That was a really bad move. I hope the MCU does an adaptation of House of X, Powers of X, if they really want to go super different. I have always wanted that because, first of all, Hickman is my GOAT, but there's that one frame where Wolverine sacrificed himself to take down Orcus, and oh man, it was so sick. I've always wanted to see that in live action. It reminds me of the scene when Thor was forging Stormbreaker and he like put himself in the middle of the sun or whatever. That was really dope. Off topic, but let's say Gunn changes Brave and the Bold name to something else and they can't use Batman and Robin because of Clooney. What name would be perfect for a Batman and Robin movie? I got ideas. It's got to be something edgy. Maybe just Batman Robin or Batman and Robin United. It's got to be something cool. Like, it's Batman, so it's got to sound cool, I don't think that they can't do it because of Clooney. I can't imagine they gave George Clooney a clause in their contract that like reserved that title up until this point. That movie was like 20 years ago at this point. George Clooney was pretty big at the time, don't get me wrong, but that's a long time to have the reservation. Like, they called Superman, and Richard Donner's Superman is called Superman too. So, son of Batman, Batman father and son, Batman bloodline. Oh, I like bloodline. Batman and son, Batman son of the demon, Batman and the Boy Wonder. Oh, I hate the Boy Wonder just because I hate the word wonder. I hate the word wonder so much. You have no idea. I just think it's the most misused word. Everyone's like, oh, that's wonderful. It's like, well, you're not sitting there wondering about it. So no, it's not. Okay. I just hate that word. Did that. Did this. To be fair, how important is Peacemaker Season 2 for Man of Tomorrow? It's not like they can easily change Man of Tomorrow a little to where you don't need Peacemaker. Yeah, I guess at this point they do need him because the Salvation Planet. So that's probably why he's going to be in it, which is interesting. I stopped listening to James hyping things up a long time ago. I think that's why I enjoyed the Peacemaker finale more than most. I didn't watch it until last night. So I had already I already knew there were no big cameos. I knew people weren't happy with it. I did think that the episode was a little unique compared to the rest of the show. So I think that was probably why people were also disappointed. But I think the cameo thing is probably the biggest because people get really, really crazy about cameos. Batman and Son works. It is Damian. I forgot it's Damian. So yeah, they could do Batman and Son, or I wouldn't do Son of Batman, just because I think Batman needs to be the first word. But Batman and Son is cool. I think it sells the point that Robin is Batman's son. No, give me 1 second. I got to take some Dayquil. It'll be literally 2 seconds. All right. So, yeah, I really like Peacemaker. I thought Peacemaker was great. I thought it was much better than season one, and I really liked season one. It also wasn't as silly and like goofy as season one got. You know, I think Lanterns should have been the show that they did. Like, that would have made so much more sense. And like, people are so excited for Lanterns. You know, I am. I'm a huge Green Lantern fan. He's the coolest character. Could you imagine how crazy people would be going over the DCU right now if we had just watched Lanterns and not Peacemaker? Like, as great as Peacemaker was, Green Lantern is more what people are looking for, I think. Especially those one note taste fans. That's what I'm going to start calling them, the one note taste fans. Because that's all they want. They just want to see superhero action, and you give it to them, and you know, someone's in a superhero suit for most of the runtime, and they'll be happy. But Son of Batman, marketing wise, just has a better ring to it. Also, the New 52 DCAMU did Son of Batman, but Batman in the title was the biggest word, while Son was on top of it with a smaller font size. I know what the title card looks like, so I know what you're talking about. I think it's different for live action. You're selling tickets. It's a different thing. Lanterns with Hal and John discovering Brainiac, and that leads to Man of Tomorrow. Such a missed opportunity. Yeah. And Black Hand is going to be in Lanterns. Atrocitus is going to be in Lanterns. So seems like they're doing Blackest Night, you know, which would be crazy. And that also has like richer and deeper themes and messaging about death and loss, loss of life. And obviously there's the, emotion spectrum as well. So you could do so much with that. Like, I just think James Gunn wanted to do Peacemaker because he did season one before. He's obviously close with John Cena. His wife is in it. And listen, I don't criticize him for liking a show that he already made and being close with John and casting his wife. His wife was amazing. So if someone criticized him for casting his wife in that show, like, to me, it says more about them than it does about the criticism, because she was incredible. She was a great actress. She nailed the role. So if you're criticizing that, it says to me that you're looking for something to criticize. Because if you actually watch the show, you would know, yeah, she is his wife, but he was justified in doing so because she is a talented actress. It just is what it is. And I also think like casting people that you've worked with before and you work well with, like, that's not a bad thing. A lot of directors do that. Martin Scorsese does it. Quentin Tarantino does it. So many of the great directors do that. Christopher Nolan does it. So, but obviously James Gunn gets criticism for it. Whatever. All right. So let's get into Batman. The rumor is that the DCU Batman is not going into production until after 2026. Like I said, it's going to be late 2028. Hungry. If this movie is not going into production until after 2026, we are not seeing that movie in the summer of 2027. I'll tell you that. Even if this movie gets fast tracked, I think summer of winter of 2028 is we would be lucky. This is crazy, and I think the problem is they have a Batman problem. I don't think that they're able to use Batman because they need to give the Batman epic crime saga, the Reeves verse, its time, and it took so much time for them to finish the script. It's taking so much time for them to go into production. And that movie, they wanted to release, then they're going to want to have it in theaters for an X amount of time. Then they're going to want to have it for digital purchase for X amount of time before they put it on HBO Max. And then they're going to want to leave it on HBO Max for a really long time before they put out the DCU Batman. And I think that this is it is a Batman problem. Because do you know what's going to happen in 2028? We're going to be a year. This is a year after Secret Wars. We just spoke about the X-Men release date being May 5th, 2028. We're going to see the MCU X-Men movie before we see the DCU Batman. Do you know how crazy that is? So I just don't know how they're justifying the DCU without Batman. Batman's the moneymaker. You look at the past 20 years, DC movies, it's all been about Batman. Okay. You look at DC Comics, it's all about Batman. There's like 10 ongoing Batman runs right now that are all selling well. There's a couple Superman. Yeah. It's not Batman. Superman's not Batman. So I think this is a really big problem. And that's why they should have, another reason they should have done Lanterns first. Like, if you're not going to have Batman, you at least need to introduce, your bigger stars sooner. Like Superman, Lex Luthor, and Peacemaker and Supergirl. It's not going to cut it. How long is production normally? Like, what if they went early 2027 as production? I think a full production, is probably a year and a half. Let me see. How long is a comic book movie production? Comic book movie production can take 1 to 2 years, with pre-production and post-production often starting long before and lasting long after the principal photography period. Total time varies significantly based on the film's scale, budget, and complexity, especially with the heavy use of VFX, which can take over a year on their own. For example, a film like Avengers Endgame had a 5-month principal photography, while Thor Ragnarok took 19 months to complete due to its high VFX needs. So they could fast track it, sure. They're going to need to if they don't fast track it, like, I would lose confidence in them. They have to. They absolutely have to. if I gotta wait late 2028 for Batman, Brave and the Bold, then Matt Reeves' Batman Part 2, better have Robin. Yeah, Dick Grayson. Yeah, because you're gonna be waiting a long time for live action Robin, and you've already waited a long time. So this is getting crazy, guys. Another rumor about the Batman Part 2, not DCU Batman, is that Paul Dano is going to be returning as a centerpiece of the Batman Part 2, which I don't hate it, by the way. Like, I actually think that's a good idea. He was a phenomenal character. He's obviously not going to be the big bad of the movie, but that makes the world feel more lived in and real and big to have the villain from the first one when you already teased him in Arkham with Joker. Like, that's a good idea to me. I think that makes sense, you know? So another interesting thing is that Warner Brothers rejected Paramount's bid, but Josh from Den of Nerds is saying that the CEO of Paramount is buying up shares of Warner Brothers, which is what's called a hostile takeover. You know, they're rejecting the bid. They're like, we don't want you to own us. But if a company's publicly traded, you could buy up enough shares to become an owner. Technically, this is how it works: is you own enough shares. If you own any shares, you're considered an owner. But like, you could buy one share for, say, it goes for $10. You could buy a share for $10, and you're technically an owner. But obviously, it doesn't mean anything. You have no significance, weight, or pull with the company. But if you find out the percentage you need to own to have that sway, and you buy that percentage up, now you're the owner with that sway. Now you're the owner that gets to call the shots. You know, I read some of it. I didn't finish it, but the comment was, "Did you read Paul Dano's Year One Riddler story?" I meant to. It was actually really good. I think I read the first like 2 or 3 issues, and I didn't finish it, but it was really good from what I wrote, from what I read, which I was surprised. Like, he's not a comic writer; he's an actor, you know. But it was actually really good. I definitely recommend it. Hungry Almighty, almost forgot to say, but I feel like the new MCU X-Men movie will also be used to establish the world post reset. Like, I can easily see an Iron Man cameo or something like that. Yeah, 100%. Like, that makes sense because if the focus is going to be on the X-Men, like, the characters should be introduced through the X-Men. It makes sense. I'm not saying it has to go that way, and they can still do an Iron Man movie and a Captain America movie if they choose, and an Avengers movie, which that will be interesting if they're doing Avengers movies and X-Men movies. I hope that's the case. Because I like the X-Men. I'm a big fan of the X-Men, but I'm more of an Avengers guy. So I would like to see Avengers movies on top of X-Men movies. I just think that the X-Men are going to take priority. What do you think of them using Astonishing X-Men as the title for the first MCU X-Men movie? I really like it. I really like that comic too. I think Astonishing X-Men is great. That'll be interesting if they do that and they don't just call it X-Men. Same. I've always been more Avengers guy, even before the MCU was a thing. Yeah. I see. Before the MCU, like, I was always into the movies, And as far as comics, like my dad used to take me to a comic store, and I would always get Batman, Spider Man, and Daredevil and Punisher. Like those were just the guys I knew of, those the characters I got. And then the MCU came around, and I wasn't really like a kid and into comics like that. And then COVID came around, and a friend was like, "Oh, I just got this Court of Owls Batman omnibus. It's sick. You would love it." I was like, "Oh, I'll check it out." So I ordered one, and I read Court of Owls, and I became addicted to comics. Like I became obsessed. And there was a local comic shop that was like down the block from my office at the time. So yeah. To be honest, I don't think we will get a solo Iron or Cap movie before an Avengers movie post reset. I think we will get an Avengers movie with that movie introducing Cap, Thor, Iron, Hulk, etc. It's possible. That would be crazy though. Yeah, and it's probably likely it's going to go that route, considering they're trying to bring the content output down because they look at that as one of the biggest problems they've had from post Endgame, which sucks because I would love to get more MCU content. I don't think the problem is quality, it is quantity by itself. I think it is the quantity is bad because the quality is bad. Like if you're just getting one bad movie, it's not a big deal. But if you're getting 10 bad movies, then it sucks. You know what I'm saying? The only Avenger I could see getting solo movies post Secret is T'Challa. I hope that's not the case. I get why you say that because T'Challa, has that importance and representation, but I still want Iron Man and Captain America to get their shine. They're just two of the best characters ever. Anyway, I'll let it rip for another minute or two, and then we'll wrap it up. Unless you guys don't got anything else. The reason I say this because look at Marvel 6160, the Ultimate Universe, Cap, Iron Man. They get Avengers titles, but T'Challa got his own solo title. No, that Iron Man got his own, but it didn't come until way later. Like I think it came like 10 years after they did the Ultimate. You're talking about the original, right? They did an Ultimate Iron Man. I don't think they did an Ultimate Captain America or Hulk or anything like that. I didn't know they did an Ultimate T'Challa though. That's interesting. Ultimate. You're talking about the older Ultimate, not the new one. Avengers movies, Spidey movies, Fantastic Four movies, X-Men movies, Hulk appears in Avengers movies, while T'Challa gets a solo movie. I was talking about the new Ultimate Universe. Okay. That is interesting. That's a good point. Ultimate Black Panther's been dope too. Yeah. That's the problem, though. Like, I don't think the quantity is the issue. I think the quality paired with quantity is the issue. I think they could do Avengers and all that stuff, but they're not going to do it. They're going to do X-Men and maybe a couple other solos. But I think that most of the solos are going to go to X-Men. I think it's going to be like Wolverine, Rogue, Cyclops, I think that's what it's going to be like. But they have to be doing something with the Avengers. I don't think they're also like, I also don't see them shutting down doing Avengers movies just because they clearly like doing that. Back to my original point of the whole episode is that they named Avengers Doomsday the Avengers because they know Avengers sells tickets. So simplicity is always best. True. I can't see that many X-Men are getting solo movies except Wolverine. Just then, who are the solos going to go to? Because they're going to have solos. Spider-Man, Fantastic Four. I'm sure the new Avengers will get one movie. Maybe that'll be the Avengers movies. But if Kevin Feige did say they're recasting Captain America and Iron Man, like those characters are going to have to be somewhere. Post Secret Wars, Avengers Assemble, Astonishing X-Men, Fantastic Four sequel, Spectacular Spider-Man, Wolverine vs. Hulk, Black Panther, King of Wakanda, fire titles. I don't think they'll call it Spectacular Spider-Man. I think that they're going to do like a trilogy with Day. I could be wrong. I also think they probably, actually, I don't know, maybe they want to keep Spider-Man first, but they did call it The Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah, I kind of agree. It's like tacky, and they already did it, so it's like kind of played out at this point. But I got to run, so it's been a blast. I will see you guys on Thursday. So Thursday I'll be back. Peace. Have a good night. Thanks for your support, your time, all that. Appreciate it, guys. Peace.